Hello, my name is Nikita. I'm a peer advisor with CLA Career Services, and today I'm going to show you a couple of technical formatting tools that you can use to make your resume look more readable and clean and properly formatted. So I'll start by talking about the header and then going through a couple of formatting tips for the sections, and then we can discuss overall what your resume should look like and why you want it to be really readable and clean, and how these tips can be used in different ways. So starting with the header we have here, there's multiple different ways you can do a header, but what we really want to focus on is separation of information. So here you can see that I've made my name in, well, not my name, but the name in the biggest font size on the page. And I've also made it bold just so that it really stands out within the header as the most important piece of information. Beneath that, I have multiple different points of contact, and they're separated by a vertical line. This vertical line is actually a key on most keyboards that you can find and insert. So on my MacBook Air, this happens to be the key at the rightmost side end of the row, on the line above my return key. If that didn't make sense, look for your enter key, and then somewhere around that area there should be a key on your keyboard with a / and above it should be a horizontal line, or vertical line, sorry, or it might be flipped around. This might vary depending on what kind of PC you have, what kind of keyboard you're using. I'm using a MacBook Air, and my key is located on the right hand side just above the return key. So to enter this, I just hit shift and hit that key, and the line is entered. And it's a really good way to just kind of divide information that's in a line or in a sequence like this. Some other ways that you can format your header, though, if you don't like this format, you can also put your information on 2 separate lines, or even 3 separate lines. With this, I would try to avoid this kind of formatting if you don't have anything on your right hand side over here, because if you're writing the rest of your resume down below and you have, say, like the education section here, it's gonna start looking like you have just a big gap of white space on this right hand side. So I would just try to avoid this. I think a better formatting with this would be to center it all. But it's totally up to you. This is obviously your resume, just keeping in mind that you want a balance of white space across your entire resume. But yeah, so if you would also like to separate your header and the information below, this is a pretty clear separation to me, but there's also another tool you can use to kind of keep those 2 sections clearly visually separated. You can go to your Insert tab on Google Docs and hit horizontal line. And what that'll do is insert this nice clean horizontal line. Pretty simple, straightforward. No other fancy keystrokes you need to do there. But yeah, I think this would be a great header for a resume. But again, using kind of these lines of separation or spaces or bolding or italics is a good way to kind of keep that information separate, or even font size. So yeah, moving on to the education section. So you can see that I've made the header, the section title, in bold and underlined, and that's just to make sure that, again, the attention is drawn to what that section of information is talking about. And then the information underneath might just be in a normal font. Minnesota, say we attend the College of Liberal Arts. And then beneath that, we might want to add our major information, maybe like other activities, such as if we were, we received the Dean's List honor, GPA, things like that, anything that usually goes in the education section. So I might put my major, Bachelor of Science in Psychology, maybe I have a minor in neuroscience, and then I can say my GPA. We'll just put in a fake GPA. So yeah, so this information all looks good, but it's a little bit difficult to tell what these separate lines of information are. If you're just looking at it, it just looks like a block of information. If we really want to draw attention to the fact that these are our degrees that we're earning, one thing we can do is maybe italicize this information. And this might just help distinguish those two lines from the rest of the paragraph that we're putting here. Another thing we can do is also add bullet points. So maybe for the GPA line, I'd like to add a bullet point. So we go to this bulleted list and we'd select one of these options. I like this one. Whatever you choose is totally fine. And maybe I want to say Dean's List here, as these are like academic honors. So I'll say 2020, spring 2022. Cool. So yeah, and then if we'd like to change the size of these bullet points, we can absolutely do so. To me, they look totally fine, but if you want to make them larger or smaller, what you're going to do is just move your cursor over, select the bullet points so that all of them are highlighted, and then you can decrease the font size like such. It won't change the actual size of the text that's on each line, it'll just change the size of the bullet point. If you want to change the text size, you'll obviously have to highlight and then decrease the font size that way. I wouldn't recommend going smaller than a 10-point size font, because then it might get pretty difficult for someone to read your resume and the information that's on it. You also don't want to go too large with your font size, however. I wouldn't go above like a 14 size font, because here I can show what that would look like. So this would be a 14 size font. To me, this is probably the largest font size that you want to go to, since it will look pretty big and it'll look like you might have a little less information on there, but a larger font size is also a good way to use that white space if you're finding that you don't have as much information that you want to add on your resume. Yeah, for the education section, I think for this side of the section, that's it. Moving on to the right side, we know that we want to have our dates and locations on the right-hand side of our resume, always. It's just an easy way to keep that important information separate, and keep it separate from your general information that is usually on the left side of your resume. So there's a couple of different ways we can do that. One way is to just tab over as far as you would like, and then start typing in the information. So I'm going to put the location first, and we see that it goes on a second line. That we don't want to happen, so we're going to just backspace a bit, and then I'm going to hit my space bar a couple of times just until it goes on to that second line again, and then backspace, so that I know it's all the way right aligned on my page. So that's one way you can right align your information. And if you wanted to do a second line for that, you would just move your cursor to the second line, do the same thing, tab, hit the tab key, which is on the upper left-hand side of your keyboard. That's where it should be. Hit that button a couple times until you're as far over as you can estimate that you want. And then I'll say anticipated graduation. And I see we went on to that second line again, so I'm going to backspace a couple times until it's on one line, and then hit my space bar over, so I'm doing smaller increments. And now both of those pieces of information are right aligned, which is what we want. However, there's another way that you can do this. So if I didn't want to, play with my tab key and space bar a lot, that's like a long process. You can also put your cursor on whatever line you want to add the information on, and then you're going to go up to your ruler here. If you're on Google Docs or Word document, your ruler should be just at the top of the page, and you can select a point on your ruler and hit right tab stop. So my cursor is still here, but the moment that I hit the tab key, it's going to move my cursor all the way over here, and then whatever information I type, so Minneapolis, Minnesota, that's going to be automatically right aligned. I don't have to do any extra tabbing, spacing, whatnot. So that's a useful tool if you have a lot of information that you want to a line on the right hand side. So I'll do the same thing for the second line. Add a right tab stop, tab, anticipated graduation, May 2023. And we see that this is a little off. I think that's because I hit my location on the ruler in 2 different spaces on each line. So if you want to move this space, you can select this arrow up here and move it over wherever you'd like to have it. So I just moved it over a bit to match the second line. And now they're also right aligned. But yeah, and then let's go on to, let's say we want to add another section. I want to do experience. And below that we'll add Peer Advisor. Let's say that's our first position that we want to add. And let's say that we want a little bit of space between this. So you can change your line spacing in a couple different ways as well. You can hit the Enter key, and then obviously, you have that double space. Otherwise, if you'd like, you can also highlight information and use this line spacing tool to make it a little bit larger than a little bit smaller than a double space, but larger than a single space. And then maybe say we don't want that anymore, just so that we are keeping our information together, and we can say we work for CLA Career Services. And then beneath that, we would put all of our bullet points, how many ever we'd like. It's important to keep your bullet points fairly consistent across your resume, just so that you don't have a lot of really different formatting, and it kind of ensures that your resume just looks professional overall and not like you're kind of unsure of what you're doing when you're adding bullet points on a document or anything like that. You'll just want to keep your information really consistent. With font style as well, for this resume, I've selected a Georgia font, but anything that kind of looks like Times New Roman, Calibri, Arial, your like general fonts, kind of like straightforward, no like fancy curls or anything or cursive or anything. Those are kind of fonts you're going to want to stick to, especially for a resume, just so that your information is pretty clear. If you want to choose a different font for different sections of your resume to also help distinguish information, that's an option as well. You can kind of page through or try different fonts and decide like what looks best. If you don't like using different fonts, one font is totally fine. It's totally up to you, but just another tool that you can use to separate information. Yeah, I think that's about it for technical tools. If you do have any questions about further formatting or other, how to do such things on Word document, or if you're not able to figure it out on Google Docs, please feel free to come in for a drop-in with our peer advisors, that's me, in our office, or we do virtual drop-ins, or you can submit your e-doc through our website and type in your question about technical formatting that you have there, and we will be able to help you by answering your question on the document itself and then emailing that back to you. But yes, thank you for watching, and have a good rest of your day.